away. I'm really happy and proud to be a sponsor of this conversation. I think it's important when we have these conversations among us. I've been a distributor for over 30 plus years, and I can tell you when I first began, I could not sell a film with a woman as the star unless it was a major star. Forget about director. Now the gates are opening, not quite as wide as we would like, but it's because of that we created the Herflix online movie platform. And we have Hollywood films, and we have short films that are in your local film festival. I do have Swedish films. I have several. We have the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy among them. I have Israeli films, not as much as I would like. We have Get. And so I want to make this invitation to all of you through the Female Film Club. If you have a film that you'd like to stream on Herflix, not exclusively, then please contact Nicole at the Female Film Club. And we'd be glad to be a platform for you to share it. And all are welcome. So there you go.
Thank you very much,
Did you hear? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. As you've requested, I'm just going to mute you just for the surrounding sounds. And then I would like to introduce Tove. I'm super excited to have Tove, as I've been a massive fan of Nordic cinema myself. And Tove Thorslund will discuss women in the Swedish film industry. Tove is the editor-in-chief of NordicWomenInFilm.com, which is a webpage and database about women in the Nordic film industry. It is intended to disseminate knowledge and awareness of women's professional contributions to film from both a historical and present-day perspective. Tove also holds a Ph.D. in cinema studies from Stockholm University, where she also gives reoccurring guest lectures on film and television history. Prior to her postgraduate studies, Tove studied film directing at LSE, University of the Arts London, and thereafter worked at the production company Film 38. So welcome, Tove.
And I would like to present Lior Elefant to as one of our speakers. I'm extra excited about this because I'm Israeli myself, so it's really nice to be connecting with the Israeli film industry and to have Lior for the very first time ever present this super important report about women in the Israeli film industry. Lior Elefant will be presenting the report on the Israeli film industry for the first time. Lior is an Israeli feminist and media activist. She is the chairwoman of the Israeli Women in Film and Television Forum, Lethal Lesbians, film festival director, and a Ph.D. candidate in Ben Gurion University of the Negev. Her research deals with women in the Israeli film industry, and the report, which will be presented at this panel, is part of this research. So welcome, both Tove and Lior.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's an honor. So let's start with the first question. So Lior and Tove, tell us a bit about the film industry in your country.
You want
to? You start. I'll be.
You want me to start? Okay. I'm going to share my screen in that case because I have a PowerPoint. See. Can you all see that now?
No.
No? Let's try it again.
Yes, now we can.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this wonderful event. I would like to start off just very, very briefly talking a bit about Nordic women in film, or just introducing Nordic women in film. which is a database of name entries with articles, portraits, and interviews with and about women in the Nordic film industry. And it's both from a historic and present-day perspective, as Liza said in the beginning. The project is part of the Swedish Film Institute's work towards gender equality in film, and was introduced during the 50-50 by 2020 seminar in Cannes at the Cannes Film Festival in 2016. A seminar where Anna Serner, the CEO of the Film Institute, called for action for gender equality in film, with the aim of a 50-50 gender parity by the year of 2020. And I'll come back to that in a bit. Nordic Women in Film is initiated and run by the Swedish Film Institute in cooperation with the Department of Research and Collections at the National Library of Norway and with the film sections at Stockholm University and Copenhagen University in Denmark. So the website is intended to spread knowledge and awareness of women's professional contribution to film within the Nordic region, and to increase visibility and put spotlights on neglected or forgotten work. So the time frame on the site spans from the work of the early film pioneers from the beginning or from the early 1900s and spans up until today. And these images that you see before you, they're just some examples of women film workers that you can read about and learn more about on the website. Was that a question? No. Articles in mainly Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish, but also in English. And there is an ongoing process of making more text for an international. So the website is nordicwomeninfilm.com. Go check that out maybe later tonight or whenever you have the time to do so. Okay, so moving on to look a bit closer at the film industry. And you wanted us to look at a number of films, budgets, financing structures, and so on. So this last year with the COVID-19 pandemic, the Swedish film industry, like every other industry in the world, has been and still is in a crisis with closed cinemas, postponed premieres and cancelled productions and so on. Nevertheless, 42 Swedish feature-length films premiered in 2020, and these images represent some of them, presented here with their English title and name of the director or directors. And just to go back to some previous years, these are the numbers before the pandemic. So in 2019, 51 feature-length Swedish films, both fiction and documentaries, premiered, and 2018 had the same number, 51. So that's roughly where we land in terms of numbers of Swedish films being made each year. If we look at the total number of films, both national and international films that had a Swedish premiere within the years 2015 to 2019, the numbers look like this. So the percentage of Swedish films screened in Swedish cinemas is actually quite small compared to the overall picture, which we can also see in this graph. So Swedish films represent 17% of feature-length films released in Sweden by origin, while films from the US, for example, represent 40%, and films from the rest of Europe represent 33%. So the average Swedish cinema goer, like many other places in the world, like to watch films from the US mainly. So very briefly about budgets, and I'm not an expert on budgets, but very briefly, the average budget of a Swedish feature-length film is 29.2 million SEK, which is about 2.9 million euro or 2.5 million British pounds. The most expensive Swedish film to date is actually a series of two. Arn the Knights Templar from 2007 and Arn the Kingdom at the End of the Road from 2008. They were produced at the same time with a combined budget of 210 million Swedish SEK, which is about 20.7 million euro or 18.2 million. So the largest film funds in Sweden, if we were to look at those, the largest film funds are applied to and granted by film commissioners at the Swedish Film Institute. And the Film Institute in turn receives money for funding from the government, which is then distributed by the film commissioners who evaluate projects both from an artistic and from a financial point of view. And the people who work as film commissioners at the Film Institute are all people within the film industry. So they can be directors, producers, screenwriters, editors, and so on. And they work as film commissioners during a mandate period of 3 to 5 years. And after that, new people come in. So looking at this graph then, the largest lot of money for film production in Sweden usually comes from the Film Institute. But of course, you need funding from other places as well. So this is an average funding structure based on feature-length films between the years 2013 to 2017. And these are all films that have received funding from film commissioners at the Film Institute. So the biggest lot is from the Film Institute, but there's also, as you can see, producers, distributors, other types of regional and national funds, television broadcasters, private equity, tax relief, and so on within the mix. And the three budget categories, low budget, medium budget, high budget, have relatively different funding structures. So films with a low budget receive a higher proportion of their funding from the Swedish Film Institute and different regional, national, and international funds, while films with a higher budget receive a higher share of their funding from distributors, commercial television channels, as well as private equity. So that was sort of an introduction to numbers and budgets within the Swedish industry. There we go. I'll stop sharing now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. I would love to give the floor now to Lior to have an idea how the film industry looks in your country, and see after that how it is with the positioning women in every of these both countries.
Okay, so I will also share my screen. If you can see, let me know. Can you? I cannot see you now, so please tell me if you can see. I don't.
We can see
somebody. Okay, great.
Yeah,
okay,
it's fine.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you so much for this really important event. For me, it's important, I think, for everyone else, and I'm really, really thankful for this initiative. I will be presenting a report that was written by Merkaz Adva Center, by Eti Cohen-Oratia, Asiel Chasson, and Noga Dagan Bozaglo, and was sponsored with the generous help of Friedrich Eber-Stiftung and the Israeli Directors Guild. So I would like to thank them especially for making it possible. And I'm again, so Tove, your present. I'm really excited to be here, and I was really excited about your presentation. And I have to say, my PowerPoint will be better as we go along. So when we talk about the Israeli film industry, it was, of course, like Tove and like other places in the world, hit tremendously by COVID-19. We almost got to a stop. Actually, there is someone with his or hers microphone unmuted, and it's really, thank you. Okay, So we got into an almost complete halt by COVID-19, but before that, the Israeli industry was quite blooming, but a very, very small industry. The annual cinema budget is first of all, we have a cinema budget by the Ministry of Culture. We have a cinema law and cinema national council. And the Israeli cinema budget is distributed by this council, and it's approximately 100 million Israeli shekels. The Israeli shekel is about 4 shekel is 1 pound, and 5 shekel is 1 pound, so it's about 200 million pounds. We have 6 major public film funds. We don't have a cinema institute like Sweden. We have 6 major film funds. We have a few other regional small film funds, which receive their budgets from the cinema budget and the cinema law. In Israel, we are a very, very small country. It's like 9 million people, but we have 18 professional film schools and more than 200 film departments in high schools, which means that we have many, many people who want to be filmmakers. And as I will start talking about women in film, you'll see why this is really important. We have 2 main film competitions, the Israeli Ophir Awards, which are the equivalents for the Oscars, and the Israeli Documentary Film Competition. And we have 3 major film festivals, fiction and documentary. We also have very strong professional unions, the Directors Guild and the Screenwriters Guild, and also Actors Guilds and so on. And we have, before COVID, we used to have 30 fiction feature films per year in average. Like we saw in Tove's presentation, when they screen about 300 films a year, international and Swedish film. This is about the same situation in Israeli cinemas before COVID. Again, small country. The film budgets are from about 2 million, which is €500,000, to 8 million Israeli shekels, which is 200 million euros, which means actually that we are working in very, very small budgets. A big budget for us is like 10 million shekels, which is 3 million euros. And we have thousands of workers, most of them freelancers, which means that the cinema in Israel, along with television, is a field that is a very precarious field, and the job security is very, very low. So I think I will stop here, and I will go back to you, Liza and Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you so much for both of your introductions about the Swedish and Israeli background of the industry. Now we really want to dig a bit deeper and go into what we're really interested in here, especially in the Female Film Club. What is the situation of women filmmakers and female-made films in your countries? What are we looking at? So, Tove, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. I'm just going to share my screen again then. So can you all see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I mentioned 50-50 by 2020 earlier. And this, the campaign 50-50 by 2020, as I said, was launched by the Swedish Film Institute at the Cannes Film Festival in 2016, and was a call for action for gender equality in film, with the aim of having a 50-50 gender parity by the year of 2020. Since then, several organizations and corporations have adapted the goal of 50-50 parity. Festivals such as the Berlinale, the Cannes Festival, the Venice Film Festival, all signed gender parity pledges. And the industry has shifted towards a greater awareness of the importance of equality and discrimination. Of course, the Me Too movement had a huge impact on this as well. Now, I might be wrong, and please stop me if I am, but I think the only larger film festival or A-list festival that actually went through with having an equal balance of female and male directors in the year 2020 was the Gothenburg Film Festival in Sweden. And they looked at having a 50-50 balance of female and male directors. But of course, the director is only one key role in a film production. But the Gothenburg Film Festival noticed that having a female director also affects other professions in film productions. They saw a pattern where women tended to work more with women and men tended to work more with men. So by choosing female directors for their film festival, the scale actually automatically went up for women producers, cinematographers, screenwriters, and so on as well. So there was an aim to reach a 50-50 gender parity within directing, producing, and screenwriting in Swedish film by the year 2020. And if we only look at the feature-length films that have received funding from a film commissioner, the numbers are quite amazing, actually. In 2020, 64% directors were females, 57% female screenwriters, and 64% female producers. And the numbers for 2018 and 2019 are pretty good as well. But if we look at all of the film releases, both with and without funding from the Film Institute, the numbers instead look like this. So this chart is for feature-length fiction films between the years 2015 to 2019. And as you can see, women directors span from 29 to 40% during these years. Screenwriters span from 20 to 42%, and producers span from 37 to 50%. So slightly larger numbers for producers, but still some way to go until we reach a 50-50 gender parity. If we look at long documentaries, the situation is slightly better. For the years 2015 to 2019, the span for female directors is between 37 to 48%. For screenwriters, the span is between 32 to 50%, and for producers, it's the same, 32 to 50%. So better numbers for documentaries than for fiction film. And one could argue that this actually goes hand in hand with budget sizes. Documentaries generally have a much lower budget than fiction films, as we all know. Now, one of the big problems remaining in the Swedish film industry is the money issue. Statistically, women and men are quite equally represented in Swedish low-budget films. But the more money involved, the less women are likely to feature as director, writer, producer, or as lead actor. So in this graph, which is based on Swedish feature-length films between the years 2013 to 2017, the films are divided into the same three budget categories as before, with low budget, including films with a production budget of under 20 million SEK. Medium budget films have a budget of 20 to 35 million SEK, and high budget film refers to films with a budget of over 35 million SEK. And as you can see, the share of, for example, female directors falls quite rapidly with higher budget categories, from directing 46% of low budget films, so pretty much an equal balance there between male and female, but only 27% females have high budget films. So few women in Sweden managed to take the step into high budget projects with extensive distribution and access to the truly high audience figures. And this is something of a catch-22 situation. The number of tickets sold is highly linked with the budgets of the films. The higher the budget, the more people will go and see the film. And the high budget films are mainly films with male directors, producers, and lead actors. So they generally get wider distribution, which in turn means more cinema goers, while films created by women who on average have lower budgets are thus also seen by a smaller audience. So why doesn't women get the same chance to make high budget films? One consequence of women historically having access to smaller budgets is that it has become somewhat normal for women to start adapting and creating cheaper productions, often as early as in the script stage. But there are no statistics to suggest that films made by women would be of lower quality. In fact, the 3 top positions in a critic-based rating index of which Swedish films since 2007 up until today have gotten the highest rank when reviewed in the major Swedish newspapers are films made by women directors. It's Amanda Chanel with Sami Bloods, Anna Odell with The Reunion, and Lisa Asham with She Monkeys, all in the top 3. So this really is a matter of old established structures and norms that we need to be aware of to be able to change. The situation is also reflecting in the Guldbagge Awards, which is the big film award in Sweden. The Guldbagge Award was introduced in 1964, that is 57 years ago. 56 awards for Best Director have been given out since, and only 11 of those have gone to female directors, with Amanda Chanel as the most recent winner with Charter this year, and Marianne Arne the very first with Near and Far Away. And she got her award for Best Direction in 1977, that is 13 years after the award was introduced. Now, these numbers may not seem very impressive, but they can also be against in the light of how many major international awards are handed. As I'm sure you know, in the US, for example, Catherine Bigelow became the first and only woman to date to win an Oscar for Best Direction in 2010 for Hurt Locker. And Jane Campion is the only woman to date to receive the Palme d'Or in Cannes, which she won in '93 for The Piano. Yeah, so I'm going to stop there. And
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tove. That was so informative and interesting and eye-opening because I didn't know any of that information. And very excited to give the floor to Lior now to continue presenting your presentation or to start presenting your presentation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again and stop seeing you. Okay, so we're talking about now women in the Israeli film industry, and of course in this platform I don't have to really explain why it's important, but I think sometimes we forget. So I just want to say again that the presence and absence of women from key roles in the film industry impact the types of narratives, topics, characters, and points of view presented on the screen. And why I cannot keep. Okay, so we'll start with the student graduation films. Like I said, Israel has many film schools, and during the significant period of film studies, which serves as the basis for the students' future careers in the film industry, this is important to say that in Israel, almost 90% of the people who are directing films and working in the film industry are graduates from a certain film school. And so this is really, really important, the beginning of the career. So in the film schools, there are hardly any gender-based differences between male and female directors. But the number of active directors drops significantly after graduation, while the number of female directors among them drops even more in comparison. So as we can see here, we actually examine the number of graduation films, and we can see that it's practically 50-50, which is amazing, but also very sad once we look at the aftermath. Looking at debut narrative feature films, so we have between 2013 and 2018, 107 debut feature films. I'm talking about narrative feature films, enjoyed the public films fund supports. But from all of them, about a third, 33 films by female directors were debut feature films. It's important to say that we looked at the debut feature films, but we also looked at the career span later, which meaning the second and third film. And whilst a third of the debut film were made by women, when we're talking about second or even third film, the situation is not good. Many women do not get to the second film. They stop at one film, and only like 2 or 3 women managed to go further. It's also important to say that we only studied 5 years, and making a film is a long process. So, in consequence, when we talk about narrative feature films, we can see we didn't check only the director. We also checked the 5 main key roles in filmmaking, which means editing, scriptwriting, production, and cinematography. And we can see that women directed 21% of the films, but in cinematography-wise, they only filmed 3% of the film, which is a very, very small number. And we can see that in the editing department, women's situation is better. And also in the scriptwriting department. It's important to say that in Israel, many of the directors also write their scripts. So it's really logical that if 21% of the women are directors, they are also the rate of the scriptwriters is also low. From 200 films we checked, 160 films were written and directed by the same person. So it is important to say that. So we also saw, like Tove said, that there is a correlation between women-directed films and the higher number of women in key roles on and off set, editing, scriptwriting, production, and cinematography. So out of 200 films, 42 were directed by women, and in 31 of those films, the majority of the key roles were staffed by women, which means we can see that in this table here, that in the films directed by women, 74% of the films were, most of the key roles were staffed by women, but in opposite, when we're talking about films directed by men, women in key roles at all, which is quite concerning considering the fact that most of the films are made by men and the presence of women on set is really influenced by that. So we should maybe talk about it later. Thinking about the support, the fund, the public support by the film funds, we can see that the biggest problem we have is that women tend to submit less scripts by far than men. Women submitted like 70% of the applications, 17% of the applications, which is a very, very low number. We will talk about it we will talk about later why it happens, but it happens. So we can see that they submit less, they get less funds, they're screened less, and so on. I'm not expecting that you will be able to read all of this in the few minutes we have, but I'm just going to tell you that women also receive less funding because they make less films. Also, we can talk about it later. I don't want to take more of your time. When we talk about the awards, so the Ophir Awards, like I said, are the Israeli Oscars and the Israeli documentary film competitions. We can see very, very clearly that women, which are here in the blue color, are not represented at all when we talk about wins from sound design or music or cinematography, this is very important to say, has changed in 2020. For the first time ever, a woman cinematographer has won the cinematography award, and she was also nominated for 2 films. However, we finished the report prior to the 2020, so it's not mentioned here, but it's really worth saying that. And we also added a line about it in the report. So as you can see, no cinematographers, very few production designers. Also, directing and scriptwriting is very low. However, the occupational segregation is evident when you look at the makeup, costume design, and casting. And also, like Tove said, in the documentary section, more women win and are nominated for documentaries than narratives. It's also evident from the Israeli Documentary Forum competition, where you can see more women everywhere, all across the board, from cinematography to editing and also research, which is a very, very major thing in documentaries. You can say, and I agree with Tove, that maybe it's because the budget is lower, but we can also discuss that later, the reasons. So a short documentary is a distinctively female-led category, and the percentage of women award winners is in most categories is higher than of men, and is clearly it's something worth thinking about. And if speaking of occupational segregation, so we can say that documentaries are more of a women's profession. One more thing which is very important to add about Israeli film industry and Israel as a whole. Israel is a very diverse society. We have a lot of minorities and a lot of intersectional. I'm sorry, I'm just really excited talking, so I just forget all my English. We have a lot of minority populations, Palestinians, Mizrahi women, Haredic or ultra-Orthodox women, LGBTQ communities, and more. And so each of these populations suffers from a different inequality, and of course a combination of much more. It's not only that you're a woman, you're a Palestinian woman or a Mizrahi woman, and so it affects your gender inequality even more. And so I think I will stop here, but with this quote by one of the Mizrahi directors. Her name is Efrat Korem, and I think her quote represents exactly what we're talking about when we are talking about representation on and off screen. If I was to look at the South or the periphery or the slums, according to how they are perceived and looked upon, I'd be in a pretty bad place. My one and only intention in the film was to perforate and punch a hole through this image, which means that women directors from one of these minority populations, they feel they have a responsibility to have a better representation, not only for them, but for their entire identity group. So when we talk about the reasons for the occupational segregation in the film industry, I think we can talk about it when we move on and talk about the change that we had, which I believe is your next question. So I will stop here. Thank you again, and I'm sorry for being so excited and nervous in my English. Bye.
Thank you so much, Lior. This is so wonderful. I think I'm speaking for all 20 plus, almost 30 people, that I'm truly impressed by both of your knowledge, and thank you for sharing this with us. It's super important. I would like to move on. Now we've seen the film industry, we've seen the women in film. What's the change? Has it improved? Is it possible to look over the past 10 years? Where are we going? How is it moving? Is there any hope for us? How is it looking? And of course, I would like to start again with Tove, if you can please enlighten us.
The situation, I believe that the situation has improved a lot within the last 10 years. There an echo? Still? No?
Yeah, it's gone now. Great.
Good. But it's going slowly. I mean, for the Swedish Film Industry, Anna Sanner, who is the CEO of the Film Institute, she started that position in 2011, so that was 10 years ago. Oh, sorry, I'm hearing my own voice. But I'll try to continue anyways. And when she started, when she was put in that position, one of her most heartfelt issues was the gender equality issue. And she put out an action plan that included a training course where women directors were informed or educated about gender equality, gender structures, and they exchanged knowledge and experience with each other. It included development funds specifically for women that only women could seek. It included the website Nordic Women in Film, and it included a strategy of counting women and men behind and in front of the camera, and presenting the results in annual reports on gender equality. And I think that has improved the situation a lot, making the numbers visible for people to read and see. I mean, of course, within the last 10 years, the Me Too movement, huge impact. The initiative 50-50 by 2020, which was incorporated by several corporations, several film institutions, several film festivals. And even though the reach 50-50 gender equality might not have been reached for everyone, still just making people aware of the issue is a great way to start. So I think for sure there's been a lot of changes in the past 10 years. And even if we're not at a 50-50 balance yet, we're making progress.
Fantastic. That's really good to know. I would love to give the virtual microphone back to Lior.
Thank you. So I'm really happy that the situation in Sweden has always been a country to look up to. But in Israel it's also better, but not like Sweden. So when I will try to look at change when I'm thinking about the reasons for the occupational segregation. So let's start with the biggest problem women in this industry have, which is sexual harassment and sexual assaults. So women leave the industry because of sexual harassment. Women get pushed out and fired from projects if they dare complain. It's such a small community that once you make a complaint, no one wants to hire you anymore. 3 or 4 years ago, most of the Israel unions, professional unions, signed a treaty against sexual harassment on and offset. This treaty is today is visible in all of the sets, and it's a very important process that we are undergoing. But we can see that it is still a major block for women. And so not only that the Me Too movement, of course, impacted the industry, but I think we're also experiencing backlash from the Me Too movement, when women are scared to complain, or maybe they feel that their experiences is not it's not harassment, or it's not assault, so I cannot say it to anyone. And so we are in a better place because there is awareness, but we're still not in a good place. So another thing is the selection committees. Like I said before, that women tend to submit less scripts. It's because of the way that the film funds selection committees work. The thing is that you present your script to a selection committee, which is anonymous, and you don't necessarily know who is there. And until a few years ago, it was only about 100% men there. So like Dana Goldberg, which is a very important writer and director in Israel, is saying, we're sitting here together in this room, 6 or 7 men and myself, the only woman in the room. And you're telling me that there are no women like her? You're telling me these experiences don't exist and women don't experience them? In this aspect, I can say that there is clearly a positive change. In 2013, the film funds decided, after discussing with the Israeli Women in Film and Television Forum, that the selection committees will be 50-50 men and women in the selection committees, and it's now bound in the cinema law that there will be a gender parity in the film committees, in the selection committees. Also, it is important to say that in the film law, it says that there has to be 30% and not 50%, but we know that the funds have 50, although they are supposed to have less. So this is a very, very positive change. We can see that from the number of films that women are making, that is rising. Another thing that influences is the very common balance of family career balance. So in Israel, which is a very pro-natalist society, women are still in the position of being mothers and principal caretakers. So Keren Ben Rafael, also an important director who directed 2 feature films, says that sometimes the combination of parenting and filmmaking seems impossible and feels as though instead of focusing on the film, I spend too much time worrying about all the logistics around it. And by the logistics, she means babysitting and taking care of the children and saying when the grandmother can come and pick them up or whatever. This is also evident from the words of Tove Asher. Tove Asher is a film editor, which has been a veteran, one of the most important film editors in Israel for about 30 to 40 years, and also directed a feature film. And she's saying that for a woman cinematographer, it's far more complicated. She needs to get up at 4 a.m. to work. So who will get up at 4 a.m. to feed the kids? The men. So it seems like a very blunt thing to say, but it's a very common thing in Israel that the women are the principal caregivers. I will stop now because we have not a lot of time. So thanks again.
Thank you so much. That was super interesting again. We would just like to wrap it up and look a bit at moving forwards. What do you think can be done? What can we do? What are the correlations between the Swedish and the Israeli industries? Is there something we can do together to improve the situation of women? In the Female Film Club, we always believe that together we can change things. So we have an international community of women who are striving to grow and have their voices heard together. So yeah, what are the next steps? I would love to hear. Tove?
Well, next steps. I think we need more knowledge, and to make the knowledge accessible. So what you have done, Lior, with your research, I mean, that's fantastic, and just spread the word. I think also people who has the power needs to step up and make targets and actually do instead of just talking. If they don't do actions, then nothing will happen. And we, the people who don't have that much power, we need to discuss. We need to continue to ask the questions. How do we recruit? Who is getting cast? Who feels welcome in the industry? Which films are awarded funding, and so on. Yeah, I think that's for me right now.
Perfect. And we hope that also you will be able to spread some of the knowledge about the Israeli film industry in Sweden, so that we can again grow together and learn more from each other. We all think we're in such different places, but actually we find we're quite similar, so we can make change happen. Lior.
Yeah, so first of all, I agree with everything Tove said. I think it's really important. Knowledge is power, and so less power in everything. So at least we'll have the knowledge, right? And I really, really want to thank her, because you're seeing your presentation and what happens in the Swedish film industry. It's really helps understand that we are not in a unique position. It's a thing, and it also gives hope for the future, because you managed in the Swedish film industry to turn the tables around and to really improve the status for women in the film industry. And since your industry is relatively similar to ours, I think it's a very hopeful situation. And I think that what we need is to understand that all the industry in all the world is going through a very hard situation right now, and COVID-19 is affecting all of us, and we need to just be there for each other. This is more important than everything, I think, and listen to the narratives and the stories that we have to tell, and understand that women are a big part of this picture, and they cannot be left outside of it. And just for that, just listen to each other. And this is what cinema does. It makes your story heard. Thank you so much, really, for this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lior, and both Tove. You guys are your women are super inspiring to all of us. We have just a few minutes left, and I would love to open the floor. If there's anyone that would like to ask a question or raise something, feel free to write it in the chat or unmute your mic and speak. As this is a conversation that we would like to keep going and see this as the beginning to open the conversation, and not as a one-time extraordinary event. Everyone is speechless.
Adriana.
Yeah, I wanted to, that was really informative. Thank you. It was really a good understanding. Being a distributor, my question is on distribution. I mean, how difficult is it just quickly to get distribution for the films, especially for the women in your country? I know that's a big question, but I'm just curious. Is it outside of Israel? Do the films get distribution?
First of all, I'm really proud to say that Israeli films are really working outside of Israel. We can see them in film festivals all around the world, and the Israeli film like Asya, which is filmed by Ruti Pribar, which was made this year, is really successful worldwide. And actually, when we look at it's not in the report, but I can say because I studied it, that the women's films are really successful in film festivals around the world. I don't know the percentages, how many get distributed or not, but I know that the Israeli cinema is working quite well.
Good. Yeah.
I think it's a similar situation for Swedish film, and I'm not an expert on distribution at all. But Swedish films and Swedish female filmmakers are doing pretty well at international film festivals. Well, for example, just this year, Ninja Thyberg's film Pleasure made it both to the Cannes Film Festival and to the Sundance Film Festival, which is a major achievement for a Swedish low-budget film, actually. So that's something to be proud about.
Yep. Good.
Yes, Osnat, feel free to speak. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to make sure that we can hear you. Do you want to speak again? Unfortunately, the microphone isn't working, Osnat. I'm not 100% sure if it's the earphones. Typical 2021 issue, of course.
Maybe she can write the question in the chat.
Yes, unfortunately, we hear something, but not completely. No, it's very muffled. Is it possible to type it in the chat so we can discuss it? As we do really want to hear. If there's someone else in the meantime, feel free to also type an extra question in the chat. And then also in the meantime, I want to take this opportunity. As we said before, the Female Film Club really wants to make this the start of collaboration. We have a link for a 2-month free trial for filmmakers. If you want to join, you're not a part yet of the Female Film Club, or you know a filmmaker who wants to be a part of these discussions and really drive change, feel free to use the link. I've just posted it in the chat, or pass it on. And yeah, let's create a fantastic future where brilliant films are being made by brilliant people, no matter what their gender is. Yeah, feel free.
I think
somebody else
Ludwig has a question. I can see.
Yes.
Actually, not a question. I would just like to say many thanks for inviting the Swedish Embassy to tonight's event, which has been very interesting for me. I like film, but I haven't done so much research into it before. But as you might be aware, we have been well, in the entire, mainly led by the Swedish Institute. Has been a big promotion on pioneering women in film, which is something all our embassies are working with. Also here in Israel, when we look at supporting various film festivals here in Israel, we really want to achieve a gender balance, and also with an especial emphasis on promoting films made by female directors. And we were supporting this last year. During COVID, the charter by Amanda Carnell to the Haifa Film Festival, and we also had top 3 by Sophie Edvardsen for the TLV Fest, the LGBTQ film festival here in Tel Aviv. So it's something we not going to solve these issues that we've learned more about today, but it's it's something we hope can at least inspire to see more to always make sure that from the Swedish side we will always try to make sure that there will be female directed movies made by women in the film festivals around the world. And thank you very much again for inviting us to this timely topic.
Thank you so much for attending. We're very honored to have you here. And it's great to hear that there's already a conversation between Sweden and Israel. And that's, I think, really what it's about. It's about getting those films to different countries and opening doors and connecting the industry internationally. So well done on all your work and your efforts. Any more questions?
I would like to just say again, thank you so much for this event, and I think it's just the beginning. And I would also like to take this opportunity and thank again Advast Center for making this report happen, because it's so important for just, you know, like Tove said, for knowledge to collaborate between. Advast Center normally does not deal with film. You know, it's a special collaboration that we made now for this, and it's amazing that this is happening. And so it's been an honor for me to work with them, and I really hope we can do it again in some other time.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you for speaking. And then I just want to close this event by thanking all of you for participating. This is how we make change happen, by collaborating and by listening and by learning. And of course, again, thank you, Adriana, and most of all, Lior and Tove, for your research, for your presentation, for your generosity. I thank you all.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you soon, and come see us in the Female Film Club. We posted the link, and let's keep the conversation going and open borders between films.
Right.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Stay safe.